Yeah, thank you very much for coming. Yeah, I will try in my lecture, to tell you more about paleogeography and paleodemography, because you never heard such things, and it will be still interesting. It will be not only about stone technology that I usually do. So it will be mainly about these things. And looking at these two maps, you can imagine what was last glacial maximum that lasted from around 26,000 to 19,000 calibrated years BP. And let us define it in terms of chronology, climate, vegetation, and landscape in Europe. The paleo environments of Europe and its surrounding regions were quite different from those of today. This period marked the most recent time global ice sheet reached their maximum extent during the last glaciation. Just imagine, glaciers covered 25% of Earth's land area. For comparison, they now cover about 10%. Therefore, the average global temperature was likely about 10 degrees Celsius colder than current averages, while estimated winter temperatures range from 15 to 20 degrees below present values. Conditions of extreme aridity and severe cold existed. Scandinavia, we can see Scandinavia and the substantial portion of British Isles were covered by a single ice sheet. Separate ice sheets covered the Alps and the Pyrenees. For us, for this lecture, it will be always important to remember where are Alps. So here. While numerous smaller and lower mountains areas were also glaciated. Substantial portions of Europe were transformed into just polar deserts. Look at this gray color. So, polar deserts. Sea levels were approximately 120 meters lower than present levels, resulting in the recession of Atlantic and Mediterranean coastlines and the terrestrial images of the English Channel and the North Sea Basin. A decline in sea levels resulted in disconnection of the Black Sea from the Mediterranean, which subsequently lowered its water levels. Black Sea actually became a lake. Terrestrial permafrost and periglacial processes occurred immediately south of the Scandinavian ice sheet. With cooler and drier conditions, forests likely retreated to the shelter of southern Europe and the Mediterranean. On the previous, but we even see here, we can see some forest areas in the south. Steppe and tundra dominated the region north of the Alps, while studies show that open land vegetation covered almost 90% of most European landscapes. This represents the basic paleo environment situation in Europe. The fauna, look at the fauna exhibited characteristics consistent with the so-called mammoth steppe environment, which was characterized by a cold, arid grassland that supported a rich assemblage of large megafauna, including woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceros, reindeer, horses, steppe bison, as well as their predators, such as wolves and cave lions. However, recent it means during last 10 years. Recent pollen and microfossil studies have demonstrated the existence of areas of open boreal forest and woodland, including certain temperate broadleaf species north of the Alps. So it means that even to the north of Alps, there were some discrete areas with forest. This challenges the view that forest species survived the LGM, Last Glacial Maximum is LGM shortly, only in southern refuge near the Mediterranean basin and the Black Sea in the south of Eastern Europe. The presence of micro-refuge north of the Alps matters as these areas provide a new baseline for understanding human movement between regions there. These paleo-environment approaches for understanding the last glacial maximum were echoed by Paleolithic archaeologists. Initially, considering the unfavorable environment conditions for human life in the northern and central regions of Europe, we archaeologists considered sheltered refuge in southern Europe where late Upper Paleolithic humans could survive. This scenario aligns with the archaeological record in southern Europe. However, micro-refuge areas, sometimes referred to as LGM oases, are also recognized in Central Europe, a region that initially thought to be depopulated during the last glacial maximum. This scenario, however, recent investigations prominently featuring research, by the way, by Andreas Meyer with his colleagues in Germany, suggest that the depopulation occurred a little earlier, between 29 and 24,000 BP, and that the LGM was sometimes a period of renewed population growth. Concurrently, a notable phenomenon during the LGM period is the elevated quantity of archaeological industries identified within this time frame, including but not limited to such industries as Late Gravettian, Aurignacian V, Epi-Aurignacian, Terminal Gravettian, Proto-Solutrean, Solutrean, Badegoulian, early Epigravettian, Grubgrabian, and Kashovian. This quantity is significantly higher than that observed in any other Upper Paleolithic period. This likely reflects some prehistoric reality inasmuch as the distortion of large-scale networks was brought about by the demographic development. And so this lecture presents data pertaining to just one of the LGM technocomplexes in Europe initially identified in Western Europe approximately 90 years ago as Aurignacian V and subsequently designated as Epi-Aurignacian in regions east of France. Specifically, we will discuss an Epi-Aurignacian industry that is well known in Eastern and Central Europe and the periods before and after its existence in Europe. Let us look at Eastern Europe. This figure showing Epi-Aurignacian sites located in southern part of Eastern Europe. And this picture also well corresponds to the paleo environment and archaeological data discussed above. Geographically, southern Eastern Europe, including the northern Black Sea lowlands, is a part of northeastern Mediterranean region. All these territories can be combined to form the Great North Black Sea region. The region is of considerable paleogeographical interest. During the LGM, it was characterized by a continuous belt of land in the south of Eastern Europe, extending from the Eastern Balkans to the northwestern Caucasus. This was due to a considerable drop in the Black Sea level by approximately 120 meters compared to its present level. Relative to its present-day level, the southern margins of the region were characterized by low-lying coastal plains. Conspicuously absent were the water-filled basins of the modern Gulf of Odessa. So this is now Gulf of Odessa. But in that time it was just land. And Sea of Azov that didn't exist at that time. As well as the mouth of the Don River that is now here. It was 50 meters to the south from the modern Kerch Strait. And the mouths of Dnieper and Danube rivers here and here are about 200 kilometers to the south. So also it's worth noting that the aforementioned water-filled basins were generally not deep, with the exception of the last interglacial and certain periods during the Holocene. Holocene, it is the period of our time. We also live in Holocene. For example, the modern Kerch Strait, again, it's here, dividing the Kerch and Taman peninsulas, is from 4 to 15 kilometers wide and 18 meters deep. Antique Greeks called it as a cow's ford Opessian 2000 years ago because of its shallow water. Similarly, the Sea of Azov was named by ancient Greeks and Romans as a Meotis lake or even Meotis swamp. During the last glacial maximum, Crimea did not constitute the modern peninsula, but instead represented just the central, southernmost terrestrial area of the region, connected to areas situated further west and east via the Danube and Kuban rivers, which flowed from the west to east and east to west, respectively. The Great North Black Sea region features a diverse landscape that includes the Black Sea coastal lowland, Crimea with its northern steppe and southern mountains, the Sea of Azov coastal upland, the Kuban River lowland, and the Caucasus foothill areas. Paleoclimatic data from across Eastern Europe for the last glacial maximum indicate an extremely cold, dry climate characterized by periglacial environments. From north to south, the following basic environment and vegetation zones with Upper Paleolithic sites are defined. So northern periglacial steppe with open woodlands in river valleys. That's it. Then goes southern periglacial steppe. And in the south goes the grass-herb steppe. The Great North Black Sea region during the LGM comprised two climate and environment zones. The southern part, that's here, southern part. The southern part of the southern periglacial steppe and the non-periglacial steppe. During the LGM, Epi-Aurignacian groups visited only the northern part of the region. So, this part, which was characterized by a non-permafrost periglacial steppe. Before the last glacial maximum, the Great North Black Sea region was largely devoid of the Middle Upper Paleolithic, so-called Gravettian technocomplex. The only Yes, the only single exception is the late Gravettian, it's 31 rock shelter in southwestern Crimea. Small collection we excavated, and that's it. This near absence of archaeological remains is characteristic of the Middle Upper Paleolithic in this region of Europe, in contrast to the well-represented early and late Upper Paleolithic sites. For example, to the north, you can see all these Gravettian sites, but not here. Recently, I proposed a paleo-environment explanation for this situation in relation to Gravettian sites, which are well known in northern periglacial steppe zone with permafrost. Here. As in Central Europe, suggesting that the Gravettian peopling of Eastern Europe likely occurred during several human dispersal events from Central Europe. The northern periglacial steppe provides rich vegetation for the survival of mammoth herds. The co-occurrence of mammoths, the northern periglacial steppe zone with permafrost, and Gravettian and Epigravettian sites in the central part of Eastern Europe is likely not accidental. On the contrary, periodic mammoth hunts and the variable use of mammoth bone and ivory often collected at so-called mammoth cemeteries near sites were crucial for Gravettian human subsistence. The two natural faunal factors, namely the northern periglacial steppe zone with permafrost and mammoths, were absent from the Great North Black Sea region. This likely accounts for why Gravettian humans avoided the southern part of Eastern Europe, resulting in a depopulated region. In the time of Heinrich Event II, the beginning of the LG, with significant climatic deterioration, the Great North Black Sea region demonstrates the presence of a series of sites related to three types of LGM Epi-Aurignacian industries, and the main of them was so-called Epi-Aurignacian with Sagaidak Muralov Katai microlith and carinated atypical and scraper course. Featuring bison. We can look at one of them. Featuring bison hunting in the non-permafrost periglacial steppe areas as the main subsistence strategy. Also, hunting of some horses was also known. This industry is known for at least 7 sites from northeastern Moldova, Rashkov 7 and 8, Anetovka 1 and Sagaidak in southern Ukraine, and then Muralovka, Zolotovka 1 and Mikhailovskaya Balka in southern Russia. The LGM Epi-Aurignacian is in southern Eastern Europe is distinct from the archaeological record that preceded it. During the Soviet era, the industry was defined as Aurignacoid, a poorly defined umbrella term for various artifact complexes dating from 38 to 18,000 uncalibrated years BP in Eastern Europe. BP is before present, again, in Eastern Europe. Since 1999, I have proposed the alternative name North Black Sea region Epi-Aurignacian of Krems-Dufour type for this LGM industry, given its general industrial similarity to the LGM Aurignacian V in Western Europe and its possible connection to evolved Aurignacian industries featuring so-called pseudo-Dufour microliths. Let us say, on the location of these evolved Aurignacian sites. Just that I was thinking about. The generic roots of LGM Epi-Aurignacian industries have often been observed in the Aurignacian assemblage from the Gura Pulavska II site. in Poland. The site contains carinated inscripers and dorsally retouched microplates. Furthermore, I suggested that that populations bearing evolved Aurignacian industries, Kostyumki occupied the site until something 27,000 at calibrated BP, in northern altitudes in Central and Eastern Europe. And then at the beginning of the coolest peak of the LGM, these populations moved to the most unpopulated areas in Eastern Europe. And here it's important to emphasize that, that such Epi-Aurignacian lithic artifacts discovered in southern Eastern Europe have not been documented in Central Europe. And now we go to Central Europe. Consequently, Central Europe has been implicated in the Epi-Aurignacian debate solely as a prospective possible origin center. However, the discovery and excavation of the Mogilno-Plevovce site in southern Moravia, Czech Republic, which features paved stone structures and specific microliths analogous to those in North Black Sea region, radically changed the understanding of LGM late UP industry sites. Petr Skrdla from Brno, Czech Republic, showed me his Moravian artifacts in 2013 and 2014 and proposed that we collaborate. And since 2015, we have been working together to understand better the Upper Paleolithic in Central and Eastern Europe. The presence of Mogilno-Plevovce site, that is, Mogilno, in southern Moravia fundamentally alters the situation, given that the Epi-Aurignacian industry is now also represented within Central Europe. The site's secure calibrated C14 dates on charcoal samples are identical, around 23,000 BP calibrated, showing a geochronological coexistence of first excavated by Petr stony structure A and stony structure B. In 2014, this is a real stony structure, small stony structures. In 2014, our survey of known sites with Epi-Aurignacian assemblages led us to identify another site, Rosenburg, in Lower Austria, which neighbors southern Moravia. Gerhard Trnka excavated the Rosenburg site in 1988, and then one of his students published the site as Epigravettian. A single C14 date available for this assemblage yields a result of about 25 to 24,000 calibrated BP on a bone sample. The dates obtained from Mogilno-Plevovce and Rosenburg exhibit a statistically significant correlation with dates from the Eastern European sites of Sahydak 1 and Muralovka. The Moravian and Austrian assemblages exhibit a high degree of similarity to the East European assemblages possessing analogous elongated chip and microblade cores. Sorry, I will show you some more. So this so-called elongated chips and microplates. Carinated atypical inscriber cores. And even we have transversal burin that is most typical for the Eastern Europe, also in Moravia. And here I refitted for Mogilno-Plevovce one burin spot for this burin that shows multiple reduction of this burin. So that was a consistent reduction Yeah, removing of a burin spole from a lateral retouched edge of the piece. Yeah, Anetov art, and here Peter made a very good picture. Yeah, about Anetovka 1 in southern Eastern Europe, Могильна Плевовца and Rosenburg in Central Europe, microliths that are indeed similar. The primary difference between Central and East European assemblages is the application of bipolar angle co-reduction in Central Europe, even in the production of microliths. Here, it's not easy to see, but here I repeated a tiny microlith on this bipolar angle core, and this is actually a rock crystal. A rock crystal is only 400 meters away, the primary outcrop from the sun. An additional aspect of the Epi-Aurignacian has been established by Petr through analysis of the Могильна Плевовца and Rosenburg sites in Central Europe. That is the site's topography and location during the Elgin time period. The Могильна Плевовца, as Petr in the beginning of his studies of that site, wrote, was situated near the bottom of a deeply incised river valley on a plateau something 15 meters above the original level of the lava river, where steep and rocky slopes shield the site from northeast, north, and west, and form a natural semi-amphitheater. And the site is over here. The amphitheater opening to the south. Accordingly, the site was, for its human inhabitants, a sort of hidden microclimatic oasis in the last glacial maximum climate. Here we can see the reconstruction, and so here is this amphitheater, and here is the site location. And here is the excavation process of one of the stony structures. A very specific feature of the Могильна Плевовца site should be added here. It's now situated below the water line of the Могильна water reservoir, which is part of the Daleshice pumped storage hydroelectric power station. The site is repeatedly exposed to fluctuating water levels, resulting in the erosion of artifacts from intact underwater setting. As a result, the surface survey conducted by Petr on the reservoir beach, as well as in the erosional channels a little above here, led to the discovery of Upper Paleolithic lithic art. The power station periodically lowers the water level for 2 to 3 days, during which time Petr, with his team, is able to conduct excavation. The Rosenburg site is situated proximate to the Camp River on a low loess plateau. The site, we are standing at the site. Here's the site. Here is the site. And so the valley widens at that place, and as in Могильна Плевовца, a plateau exists just a little above the current river level. And the plateau is shielded from the west, north, and east by rocky slopes, creating an effect similar to the local microclimate observed at Могильна Плевовца. Here, Petr made a plan of the site topography, and here you can see this hidden place for Могильна Плевовца, and exactly the same position for Rosenburg. Here are different sites. Also, in both cases, the site's hidden lower topography closely resembles the typical position of much later Neolithic sites in the region. Unsurprisingly, Rosenburg's Epi-Aurignacian layer was excavated under Neolithic occupation, and similar Neolithic finds were also discovered at Могильном Пловце. Here we should return to the Eastern European sites, which are situated on higher river terraces, offering a good view of the nearby river valley and bison heads. For example, this picture I took at Anetovka site. I'm standing at Anetovka 2 Epigravettian site, and here is Anetovka 1 Epi-Aurignacian site. And so they're really above on just, let us say, normal terraces. And all the southern sites in Eastern Europe were not in hidden locations, except of the single case with Rashkov 7 and 8 sites situated beneath the protective plateau. These differences in site topography fully correspond to the presence of micro-refuge north of the Alps I was talking about before, with open boreal forest and woodland. Accordingly, the Могильное Пловце and Rosenburg sites represent human hidden locations in micro-refuge areas, while LGM sites in southern Eastern Europe display regular higher terrace topography. As previously mentioned, the characteristic small-sized microliths from these sites were also recently analyzed by José Marias, a colleague from the Basque country, Spain. Besides being an archaeologist, José is the useware specialist. He studied the function of Могильное Пловце microliths and identified and scraper cores from which blanks were flaked for the retouched microliths elongated chips. The results indicate that the end-scraper cores were initially used to flake elongated chips, but were later often employed as just tools and scrapers. The microliths served as inserts for projectile hunting weapon. Here you can see some projectile damage. Shown by these red color arrows. Also worth noting is that animal remains from the Могильное Пловце and Rosenburg sites included ungulates like horses and reindeer. Accordingly, bison, which is characteristic of the southern regions of Eastern Europe, are hunted by LGM human populations, is notably absent in Central Europe. This suggests that these LGM human groups did not, in fact, specialize in the hunting of a single ungulate species, as was often said during Soviet era. Rather, they were engaged in hunting any ungulates inhabiting the aforementioned regions. To summarize, our study clearly demonstrates a match between paleo environment and archaeological data for the LGM period. It allows for a better understanding of Upper Paleolithic hunter-gatherer communities' lifestyles. These LGM Epi-Aurignacian human groups were very mobile, given their site presence not only in Eastern and Central Europe, but also in Western Europe. Presumably, the lithic artifact reduction system played a crucial role in the fast movements of these humans throughout various territories. It appears they required only flake cores and a limited selection of so-called domestic tools in addition to hunting projectile weaponry. Upon relocating, they likely engaged in coin-napping, primarily to obtain thick flakes for use as blanks in creation of carinated atypical and scraper cores. These pieces were then flaked to create elongated chips, many of which were retouched to serve as inserts for hunting projectile weapons. Additional flake debitage pieces were utilized as retouched pieces and scrapers and burins for the various dismemberment processes of hunted ungulate bodies and carcasses. Reaching the next location was easy again. Environment micro-refuge areas could be the next stop. Certain environmental micro-refuge areas may represent indeed the next destination. The varying quantity of lithic artifacts across different sites should be interpreted through the intensity and duration of each settlement and potential palimpsest events. Okay, I could speak for hours about the LGM and its humans, but I think that's enough. Finally, I very much thank the Auerbach Institute for the opportunity to work in Cologne along with my friend and colleague Andreas Meyer. Scientific networks are essential for the advancement of science, playing a vital role in progress. The latest picture illustrates a portion of our network. 2015. After visiting the Rosenburg site in Austria, where Professor Gerhard Trenka from Vienna University brought us. And here you see Andreas, Peter Skrdla, me, Gerhard, and our colleague from Iran was with us, Sonia Shedran. And the picture was taken by our good Austrian-German friend Uli Singh. And the next picture is 2016. We were working with Peter in Brno, Peter, Joseba, and me. We were working together. And so you see, people from different countries, Ukraine, Czech Republic, Spain, Germany, Austria, working together. And this brought all these results. Thank you very much for your attention.